Hello, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Moore's October Rants. Today's episode is going to be titled, Maybe They Were Right. Last night I was having a conversation with this woman, and she started talking about how careful she has to be on social media as a woman. She was explaining that if she decides to reject a guy's advances, or let a man know she's no longer interested, it can get messy real quick. She said she's had guys who've gone out of their way to dig up personal information, her name, birthday, even where she lives. And she's obviously freaked out by it. I'm sitting there listening to this, and of course, I'm like, yeah, that's messed up. I can totally understand why, as a woman, she'd be cautious online. I mean, no one deserves to feel like they're being stalked or harassed because they're not interested in someone. But as we kept talking, something started to stick in my mind. I started wondering why anyone would go to such lengths if the interaction was truly innocent. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's right for someone to dig into someone's personal information. That's creepy and totally wrong. But it made me think, is the person who's being targeted always as innocent as they claim to be? We've all heard stories where people paint themselves as the victims, but sometimes there's more going on beneath the surface. As the conversation went on, this woman told me about how men have said terrible things to her and how some have reacted very negatively when she rejected them. And I'm sure some of those reactions were completely uncalled for. But then something interesting happened. I sent her a voice message. It wasn't just a quick, "Hey, what's up?" It was a long message, about 3 or 4 minutes, where I shared my thoughts on what she had told me. I was trying to be thoughtful, really taking the time to explain how I felt about everything she was saying. And do you know what she replied with? One word. Okay. That's it. Just, okay. And I've got to be honest. That was frustrating. You take the time to pour your emotions and thoughts into a message, and all you get back is, okay? It's dismissive. It's rude. It's like she didn't care at all about what I had to say. And here's where things got even more interesting. I told her she was being rude and disrespectful, that her response didn't reflect the effort I put into my message. And she didn't even seem to care. She just brushed it off with, yeah, cool, as if it was no big deal. At that point, it started to click for me. Maybe some of the guys she had been talking about, the ones who had blown up on her, weren't just reacting out of nowhere. Maybe they were reacting to the same kind of behavior I was getting. She had this dismissive, almost arrogant way of acting, that could easily push someone's buttons. Now let me be very clear here. I told her straight up that I don't condone what those guys did. Stalking someone or trying to intimidate them with their personal information is never okay. It's crossing a line. And I'm totally against that. But after experiencing how rude and disrespectful she was with me, I could start to see how she might have provoked some of those reactions. And again, I'm not saying it's okay to retaliate with threats or intimidation, but I can understand how someone might lose their temper after dealing with her attitude. So I was thinking, maybe they're right. Maybe some of these men she's talking about weren't just flying off the handle for no reason. Maybe they were reacting to how she treated them. I mean, if she was dismissive and rude with them the way she was with me, I can see how someone might reach their breaking point. Again, I'm not excusing their behavior, but it's one of those situations where the more you look into it, the more you realize things aren't always as one-sided as they seem. As we continued talking, it became even more apparent that she wasn't as innocent as she was making herself out to be. She told me these stories about how men would just randomly insult her or act aggressively after she rejected them. But I couldn't help but wonder, was there something in the way she communicated that led to those reactions? Maybe she wasn't just the poor, innocent victim she wanted to portray. And look, that's the thing. None of us are perfect. We all have flaws, and we all make mistakes. But it seemed like she wasn't even aware of the role she might have been playing in these situations. She was quick to blame the men, but never took a moment to think about how her own behavior might have contributed to the problem. At one point, I told her, "Look, you're acting like these men are monsters, but you've been nothing but rude and dismissive toward me. Maybe you're not as innocent as you think. And predictably, she just brushed it off. She didn't want to take any responsibility for her actions. And that's where the real problem lies. If you're going to engage with people, especially in situations where emotions are involved, you've got to have some self-awareness. You've got to recognize that how you treat people affects how they respond to you. It's like she thought the whole situation was just a game. She could be rude, dismissive, whatever, and people would just take it. But people aren't robots. They're going to react to how you treat them. And if you're constantly disrespecting them, don't be surprised when they snap. Now again, I'm not saying that excuses things like doxing or harassment. Those are extreme responses, and they're never justified. But I understand the frustration some of these guys must have felt after dealing with her. And I get that some of you listening might be thinking, well, just because someone's rude doesn't give you the right to lash out at them. And I hear you. I agree. We all have control over how we respond to situations. Some people can keep their cool no matter what, while others might lose it more easily. It all comes down to perspective, and everyone's perspective is different. You can choose to rise above, or you can choose to react. It's your call. But I think it's important to acknowledge that how we treat others plays a big role in how they respond to us. At the end of the day, this woman wasn't as innocent as she wanted me to believe. She had some serious communication issues and didn't seem to understand, or care, how her behavior affected others. And if she's running into the same kinds of conflicts over and over, maybe it's time for her to take a look in the mirror and figure out what she's contributing to the situation. You can't keep blaming other people for your problems if you're not willing to change your own behavior. So that's my rant for today. Maybe they're right. Maybe some of these men she's talking about had a point when they snapped at her. Again, I'm not excusing their extreme reactions, but I'm saying that after experiencing how she treated me, I can see why someone might lose their temper. I hope this gave you something to think about. Remember, communication goes both ways. How you treat others will often dictate how they treat you. Anyways, thank you for listening to this episode of the Moors October Rants. Signing out, have a good one, guys. Goodbye for now.